traditionally the Olympia Group Clinic has done an outdoor activity in June. And that is scheduled for Saturday, June 1st.
Correct.
And we're going up to DuPont, is that correct?
Yes.
And so details will be coming out, but folks up north are invited to join us if you'd like. We're going to be going to see the DuPont.
It's a DuPont museum. About the railroad.
And the railroad there.
And they're in the throes of having restored the original boxcar. And I sat in their board meeting on Monday, and they basically signed the contract with the contractor to have it. So part of what we're going to do is pass the bag and see how many people would be interested in helping to pay for it. They pretty much got the money, but anybody that wants to donate can. So.
Okay, so Don is sharing that they're doing a restoration of a boxcar up there, so that will be details coming on that. Russ, are you involved with that group still?
Yes, he is.
Yes.
Anything you want to say?
I'm going to hunt for a photograph of that car. Chip and Gilder has made some 3D models, which will be available for OM30 and in other scales. 3D printed models of that boxcar, and they're quite striking. Jim Sable brought a couple of them to show us yesterday at lunch here in Newcastle, and so anybody in OM30 will be very interested in having one of these.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, any other announcements? Yeah, Scott.
Yeah, I believe on June 8th is the 4th Division bidding meet at Snoqualmie. Going to be, I believe, a train ride, shop tour, clinics, and some layouts open to visit afterwards. Russ made one by tonight.
Okay, that the announcement was on the June 8th spring meet up in Snoqualmie for the 4th Division spring meet, a day of outing on the train and some clinics and tours, I believe. Russ, anything you want to add on that?
No, it should be a lot of fun because we'll be able to tour the shops where the cars and equipment are all restored and maintained. And the train itself is very interesting, and I think you'll find it a very, very worthwhile endeavor.
So it's Saturday, June 8th, I assume 10 o'clock in the morning maybe or something like that?
There should be something in the grab iron shortly about it. I'm not.
Okay, so watch the grab iron for that and the details on that. Anything else?
Well, it is our annual meeting, and there should be some comment about the election of officers.
That's right. Any other announcements for the good of the order? Okay, so we've been doing, for the Olympia Clinic since January, we've been doing consecutive meetings on operations. We've had some different themes. We've had some prototype engineers that have talked with us, and then we talked about some small layouts and some medium and larger layouts. We're going to wrap up the series tonight with a session on JMRI. Hopefully that rings a bell with you, what JMRI is. It's a freeware program that you can actually download and use to do a lot of different things. One of the elements of it is car forwarding and in support of your operations. So tonight we have Scott Nelson that's going to present, and I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him. I'm going to move the camera to focus on his mug. And we'll take it away, Scott.
Thank you. And then I'm going to share my screen. Does that look good?
That looks good.
My name is Scott Nelson. I am the president of the Olympic Model Railroad Society in Lacey, Washington. And as mentioned, today's presentation is going to be using JMRI for operations. For this demonstration, we're going to be utilizing what we're calling the I&I division of the Olympic Model Railroad Society. And INI stands for the Illinois and Indiana Division, and I'll explain a little bit more about this in just a second. I do want to say that a shout out and thanks to a number of people, Jeff Ross, Doug Miller, Gary Tobias, Jim Elder, who's in the room, Lou Geiser, and a number of others who have all helped contribute to help make this, and without their help, it could not have happened. And so just thank all of them. And so just some fundamentals of what the INI is. It is a privately owned modular layout. It's our intent to promote operations at local shows. It's also our intent to promote the Olympic Model Railroad Society. It is 2 foot by 25 foot, set in 1955 in Northern Illinois. But our intent is to take it to the shows and invite the visitors to actually run the trains. So it's not something where we run the trains, it's the people at the shows will be asked not only to run the trains, but to actually attempt operations. We're also going to introduce a component of friendly competition between siblings, between parents and children. So as you'll see here in a second, is we want a component of how well can someone operate against another. It's based on a common design, John Allen's time saver, but we're taking it that we also intend to that it can have scenery, buildings, and details. It also has that it's slightly different, that it's an end-to-end design instead of side-to-side. Under John Allen, it used to be called the Snap Track Time Saver. And basically what we've done is we've stretched it. So now it's stretched out longer than wider. And so here's an early design with some slight changes made to show the overall concept, but basically it mirrors from one side to the other. And then the club member would man the center turntable roundhouse area just to keep the visitors behaved. But the same amount of industries, the same amount of track, but the same amount of cars and switching, but same amount of challenge, but at the same time, the same concept of challenge. And so, and then zooming in just a little bit, so you can see on the west end, you have King Midas Flowers, Scott Commodities, a team dock, Flying A Oil. What was called Open Air Transload became Lincoln LCRL Transfer. And then on the other side, you have Industrial Supply Company, Hardwood Furniture, Ayers Chairs, and then Heritage, Grain, and Remco. And as all things happen, here's some early stages. And if it looks like a disaster area, it was. I think all of our layouts at one point looked like this, and this was no different. The goal of this is, as I said, modular. So these are 2 foot long and intended to be disassembled. And then they have legs that collapse in, trailer harness wiring, so easy disconnect, and then haul and then reassemble. Why does the map matter to operations? Why did I go that way to go forward? Is because the first component to JMRI operations is you have to identify your locations. So as I said on the INI, we have the 10 industries, the Scott Commodities, the Team Track, King Midas Flour, Flying A Oil, and Open Air Transload, which has the 2 tracks. On the east side, we have, again, the same 5 types of industries, different types, but same 5 industries: the Industrial Supply, Ayers Chairs, United Grain, Hardwood Furniture, and then Remco that also has 2 tracks. In JMRI, these are all classified as spurs. So cars come in, and then the next session, they would come in either empty or full, and then the next session they would leave with their status changed. Full would be now empty, or empty would now be full. And so if I just wanted to show the map one more time if anyone had any questions on And then the blue is what I call Bensonville Yard, the middle of the yard. And I'll go into that in just a minute. As I said, I&I has locations. It has the one yard named Bensonville, which had 3 tracks. In JMRI, it's classified as a yard. I also have one additional track called the IHB. IHB, it stands for Indiana Harbor Belt Clearing Yard. Classified it is a spur, and I use it as an interchange track in and out, and it helps converts my loads in and out, loads in, empties out, and you'll see as we go into this, one train takes cars out of Bensonville to the Harbor Belt, and then the next session it'll bring cars from the Harbor Belt Yard back and return them back to Bensonville. And so when we go into, and pause 1 second, I have to do something because I cannot see. I gotta get rid of. What you don't see is I have a black rectangle that is messing. Okay, so locations in JMRI, you go in, you create them by add location at the bottom. I'm gonna pause here. I'm not showing, there are other slides on how to get to these things in JMRI. We decided not to show those slides at this point. It is fairly easy to find them, and at the end of the presentation, if you have questions about that, I will be glad to show those. But we went into how to use JMRI for operations. I just wanted to explain that real quick. So in JMRI, in locations, we added these locations. And as I said, here's your Ayers Chairs, your Bensonville Yard, Flying A Oil, and you can see that they're either spurs or yards. And they're created by, in JMRI, just going add location at the bottom. There's just a button, you just click add location. To set up these locations, you also need to know the lengths of the spurs and the yard tracks. So one of the things I learned is that the lengths are in HO scale for me, feet. So they're in 40-foot car length feet, 50-foot car length feet. One of my first mistakes is I measured in human feet. Yeah, don't do that. It's you want to use HO scale feet. So you need to know the length of your spurs and sidings and your yard tracks. And when you click add location, a new screen will appear. Very similar to this. And I'm gonna fight this whole session. At the top, you type in the name, you identify which direction of trains will service this location, and then which rolling stock will visit this location. You'll also identify where I showed the yellow, the add spur track. You click that, and then you add the location. So you type in the name, click add location, and then add spur track. And then if you need to make changes, you hit save location, the other highlighted yellow. So you could have some locations that are only serviced by trains going west. You could have some locations that are only serviced by trains going east. And so this is, if you have switches that are trailing switches that you don't want trains servicing, you can set this so that you don't have those engineers dealing with those switches that are out of their way. And so for like Ayers Chairs, which I clipped a picture of that in the map, you can see here that this train is actually serviced by both trains east and west. And Ayers Chairs only gets flat cars, box cars, flat wood. I did have to have it one of the things I also learned is you have to assign the locomotives, or the locomotives won't go to the industry and you can't deliver the trains. And so you can see the flat bulkheads, flat timber. These are the cars that the JMRI will assign to go there. You can also see in Ayers 1, I only have one siding for Ayers Chairs. I gave it 440 feet, so it can take 10 40-foot flat cars. And currently I have one flat car there, 44 feet, and one car is sitting there at that industry. And so, again, just a little more detail on that. This is the siding for AIRS. This is AIRS 1, that exact siding. You have options that it'll accept any road. It'll also accept any loads. Maybe you have one track that you want only empties going to, or you want one track that only accepts loaded cars. You can also select cars that, if you want it only to accept setouts, or it only wants pickups. This is where you can have that siding be set so that it only accepts certain conditions, so that you can drill down and set exactly what happens to that siding. For this situation here, I have any setouts, any train, any pickups, any trains, any loads, and any roads. So basically, any train coming past here will service this track and this siding. If you wanted to, and I did this just as an example, maybe this is an industry that is very competitive, and in this case, I want it only to receive a local industry, so it only accepts Milwaukee Road freight cars. And so maybe you have a home-owned railroad, and you want only your owned railroad cars going to that industry. You can actually set it so that your railroad cars only show up to that industry. And that's what I'm showing here, is it only accepts Milwaukee Road cars. This is also where you can also hit accept only if you only wanted to accept boxcars or a certain type of cars. You can set it, maybe you have one track that is your empty coal cars, that you want, whenever an empty coal car comes to this industry, that this spur is where all of your empties always go, and then where your loaded cars always are coming out of a different one. That you can set those loads to be set for that. I wanted to go ahead and show a different example. This is the Lincoln Lesson carload transfer. On the map, it's called open air transfer. As shown here, I have two stubs, a very short one, which is just a 2-car stub, and then the other one, which takes 4 cars. And again, you can see here that sorry. What you can see is that the cars that the industry will accept and those cars that it will not accept. And again, this industry will accept trains serviced east or west. And this is, it may seem hard, but it's not very hard to set it up. Is there a question in the chat?
There is. Do you want to wait to the end or take it now? Can you plan for cars that are shorter than 40 feet?
Absolutely. Any questions in the room? Okay. And then this is drilling into the Lincoln Stub 1. Again, this is where you set the length, and then the individual cars that go to the spur. So you could have one spur that takes only certain cars, and then the other spur takes only certain other cars. So now let's set up the yard. And in this case, it's it's along the back there. One of the things that I ran into is with operators that are new, that they had a problem understanding which is track 1, track 2, track 3. So I ended up naming Bensonville 1 as the furthest track, or called it back. Bensonville 2 was the middle track, and then Bensonville 3 was my closest track. And in this case, you can see that all cars go to any track in the industry, and all cars can go to any track in the yard. And you can see that I've got 440 feet in the back, and I'm currently got 8 cars sitting there and 411 feet taken up. And then again, just like before, Bensonville 1 accepts all loads, and then accepts all of the freight cars available to it. And again, you have to set all the locomotives, or what it'll do is it'll throw an error that your locomotive can't go to that track. And what good's a yard if your locomotive can't go get the cars? And this is where you would go and set your length. One of the other things that you can do is in the yard, is you can set the pickup car order. In this example, I have it normal, but if you have a stub yard, you can set it to either be first in, first out, or last in, first out, so that it's always pulling, in a stub yard, that it's going ahead and pulling the last in, first out, so it keeps pulling from that end, and you're not drilling always to the wrong end of your yard. So it's pulling the cars closest to the end of your stub, and you're not fighting every car in the yard. So you can actually set it to help you drill, move your yard. Again, and then in my interchange, very similar. My one thing with the interchange is that that I excluded any Milwaukee Road freight car. Basically, what I want to do is my interchange, I keep my home road cars local, and then I want to avoid my demurrage, and I'm trying to ship all of my foreign road cars off system, get them offline, and get them moving, and then keep my local Milwaukee Road cars available for local loads. And so I just went in and excluded Milwaukee Road cars from interchange. That's so here's my 3 yard tracks, and this is the train's actually sitting on the main line. Okay, so next up, I'm going to take just a minute. Questions before?
There was a question in the chat, says, how do you measure the length of the spur?
I ended up literally taking a 40-foot freight car, putting it in, then putting a second one, and literally, you can also use an HO scale ruler, but I cheated and just grabbed a 40-foot freight car.
What you mean is a scale ruler. So if you were modeling a different scale, you would use that scale ruler, right?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Exactly. Because one of the things in JMRI is you set what scale you're running. And so you have to do it in the scale of what you're operating. Correct.
Okay.
Thank you. So when it comes to the cars, you'll need to document the cars that you're utilizing in operations. You need the car number, the road, the type, and you have broad ability to customize them, the length, the load, and then the one that is the most annoying for me is you have to document the color of the cars. This is something that I had to go back and collect the color of every car that I use. How many of you know what color of every freight car you have? Yeah. It does help to have this information in advance. So you go to operations and then cars, and then you'll get a screen like this. And then, for example, here, the Milwaukee Road 8738, you just click add car, and you can see here the Milwaukee Road 8738, Milwaukee Road boxcar 40-foot. Right now it's loaded, and this car is at industrial supply. And in my operations, you can actually see that this car has moved 40 times in operations. So this car has been it's gotten a lot of revenue service. And so when you're in cars, you just click add car, and a screen like this pops up, and you can click, and most of the road names are there, but you can click edit and add. You put road name, type, it's a drop down, you put your type of road, type of freight car. This is where you can adjust your length. This is completely adjustable, whatever length you need it to be. Here they've got a drop down for 32, 40, 86, whatever length you need it to be. It'll auto calculate the weight. This is where the color comes in, and then you can decide if the car is currently empty or full. Yep. And then who owns the car, and then click add car down at the bottom. And so, like, here's my example of, you would just type in Rock Island 15592, 40-foot box, brown, empty, or loaded. One of the things that I have is in 55, they shipped a lot of grain in 40-foot box cars. So I have a lot of 40-foot grain boxcars, and that's a specific type of freight car on my layout. And I want those going to my grain elevators separate from my normal boxcars.
Scott, is there a place to put a photo of each car also,
Or
not yet?
I don't think so yet.
The question was, is there a place to store the photo of each car?
And so as I was saying is here's, if you click edit, you can type in what road name and just hit add. So if you have like OMRS, we have our own fleet of freight cars. You can type OMRS and hit add, and it'll remember that reporting mark going into the future. And the same thing for car type. Once you type in 40-foot boxcar, grain boxcar, it will remember that and have that available for the rest of your, not session, but the time that you're using JMRI.
There's a question that can it be set up for O scale?
Absolutely, yes. Yep. And I believe it, yeah, O scale, OM30, yeah, there's no difficulty without any of that. Okay. And then you can see here in the bottom box is where you can see that I put the grain boxcar that I set up earlier. That I wanted that car type. And then here's the Minneapolis St. Louis car, the 4498, the red one that we saw earlier, 40-foot, that's sitting in Bensonville Yard. And then a different one, tank car. And then you can see that it has a hazardous already. So it's going to try to route that car not to be next to the engines or the cabooses in your switch list whenever possible. It's also going to print on your waybills warning your engineer that that car is a hazardous car. And so sometimes the best of everything you may try, things will happen. Something may happen, the car may break. So in the set, you can go in and put the car out of service. Maybe you have to make repairs. So you can put it out of service and it will not put that into any switching until you put it back into service. You also have the blue there, location unknown. Maybe one of your crew have moved that car to destinations unknown. If it's location unknown at the bottom of every waybill, it will ask your other crews to keep an eye out for that car until such car comes back. One thing that I've just recently learned is putting a car out of service does not give you that track space. So I ran into an issue that I switched all 45 of my freight cars and it kept telling me I had no track space because all the 45 cars that were out of service took up all the layout. So I've now created a fictitious yard called Savannah that all the cars that I took off the layout are now currently in Savannah. Because out of service does not take them off the layout and they take up track space just because they're out of service. So I've learned that one painfully.
There's a question about what the kernel field was on that one screen. KERNAL.
And this one?
Yeah.
Bottom right corner,
Bottom.
third row for the bottom.
The bottom.
You know what? Ask me that in a minute when we're done and we'll go into it. I'll have to look at that one. Okay. So you've set up, you know your industries, you know your locations. Now we need a route. And so the same thing in Operations Pro, you go in routes. In routes, on the I&I, it's fairly simple. I have a westbound, I have an eastbound, and then the interchange. The westbound I called Galewood, the eastbound I called Hampshire, and then the interchange, it's real simple, it's to the Harbor Belt. And so you can see here, Galewood goes west, Hampshire goes east, and then the transfer goes east as well. And what you do is, this is where you set the train of what industries it's going to. And so here you can see that this is the Galewood, It leaves Bensonville, goes to King Midas, goes to Scott Commodities, goes to the team dock, goes to Flying A, goes to Lincoln LCL transfer, and then returns back to Bensonville Yard. So it goes west, 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 and then when it's all done, it goes east. And I'm going to be going through all of these colors in just a minute. It's not as scary as it may look. As I was talking about here, and just give just a snapshot of the map again. You come out of the yard, go to King Midas, down to Scott Commodities, down to the team dock, down to Flying A, then LCL transfer, and then back to the yard. So just how does it, and you can set this however you want it to do. I just tried to do how do you want your engineer to run the route? Or how do you want to mess with your engineers would be the other way. You could do King Midas and then, LCL transfer and then back up to Scott Commodities if you really wanted to mess with them. But you set up edit route. This is how many cars the train may move at that location. So this is your maximum. Realize that some cars may return to the original location. So when I say move, what I'm trying to say here is you have to move that car out to get to the car behind it. And so if it's like the grain elevator, the car you want is 3 cars in, but you got 5 moves to get to that third car to pull it out, and then you got to put the 2 cars back. Or one of the cars in the train that you came from Bensonville is one of the cars you're dropping off. So you're giving yourself 5 moves total at that industry. How many moves do you want your engineer total at that industry? Jim, you look puzzled.
Some engineers are going to do it better than others.
That's true. Yep. But it limits how many. So it doesn't give your engineer 15 moves.
What happens to him if he fails?
Well, it just
Does he get fired?
it just limits how many cars it's going to limit how many cars it's going to force your engineer to move.
So if you move 5 cars with 1 physical move, does that count as 5 moves?
Yes.
Really?
Yep.
Okay.
So the question was, if you move 5 cars with 1 move, is that 5 moves or 1 move?
Yep, and that's 5 moves because you move 5 cars. Also remember that not all cars return to the yard. If the car is empty and a future location on the route needs that type of car, JMRI may route that car to a future industry on that route. So if you picked up an empty box car at one industry and an industry, two industries down the road needs an empty box car, it will have you drop that box car off there before going to the yard. So you may end up moving a car and it not being routed through the yard first. And so it's tricky. It'll catch you on that one because you'll be like, well, I picked this car up. It should go into the yard, but you don't. You're supposed to drop it off at a different industry. Random, and this is one of those things that is backwards. It reduces the number of stops at that location. So it's the higher that you change it, it reduces the chances of you stopping. So it's kind of backwards, but the more you turn it up, the less chances you're going to stop there. So the less chances you're going to have a stop at that location. It's a little backwards, but it randomizes it. So off means you're always going to leave with a car from Bensonville Yard. 30 means that you may not pick up a car there very often. Pickups, set outs. Again, this is where maybe you have, on the Milwaukee Road, we have a patrol. Maybe you have a patrol that comes through that will only do the pickups, and your local is only doing set outs. And so you can set that this train only does set outs and that it's going to run back to the yard always empty. And you're going to wait for a different train to do all your pickups. And then max length is the other one that I found to be the most difficult. This is also a learning curve to dial in. It is the max length of the entire train at all times through the entire route. So this 1,000 feet is through all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 stops. It is all of those stops combined. The train will never exceed 1,000 feet, combining cumulative. So I was 400 feet or 300 feet plus 200 feet plus 300 feet. And so it's as you go through the whole entire time, the train will never reach excess of 1,000 feet total through all of these stops together.
And the purpose of that?
I can't answer that one. Yeah, this is one it takes some dialing in. So I think the goal is not to overload your train or your operators, but it's the tricky. This is one you have to dial in.
Let's keep trains short enough to fit into sidings.
Yep. But realize it's cumulative. It keeps adding up. So after the first industry, you left Bensenville with 200 feet. You picked up a car. It's not 250 feet. It's 450 feet because it took the 250 feet plus now your 250 feet plus the cars you added. So it keeps adding.
I typically do it by number of cars on my railroad, where I'll say maximum train length is. And that's basically just so it'll fit into a siding.
Okay. So yeah, that's what they're doing. And then I'm not going to do the same thing as in depth, but just I wanted to show what the Hampshire local looks like. Same 1,000 feet, same randomness, and then just 5 moves. I was trying to keep it pretty much the same challenge. And then the interchange, it's even simpler. You take 5 cars out of Bensenville, set them out in the interchange, and bring 5 cars from the past session as new loaded cars from the other yard, in, out, in. And then the final step we're going to go into here is adding the trains. And it's the last, and these are in order: settings, locations, cars, locomotive, routes, trains. Again, we have 3 trains: the westbound, the eastbound, the transfer. Again, you use it and design it, using the add train in the lower left corner. Here's the Galewood Patrol, and just like before, this train services Bensenville, King Midas, Scott Commodities, Team Dock, and when you add Galewood Patrol, you pick the route. All of these locations auto-populate into the train. So you pick the route, and then all of a sudden, all these locations appear, and then you can pick if you want it to exclude any. You just unclick it if you don't want it to do it. You can also pick if you want any of these types of loads not to be on the car or not to be on the train. Also say, I think it's another one. So, and I just covered this. I'll go ahead and cover this. We tried using cabooses, the line in purple. For the longest time, we tried using cabooses, and it held up things and it stopped things the most. We could not get it to recognize that I had cabooses where I needed cabooses, and I could not build trains because it would not find the cabooses. And JMRI struggled more with the cabooses than any other type of car type. And so we finally decided that cabooses are free runners because it was easier for the engineers to find their own caboose than JMRI to find the caboose. I don't know why, but JMRI struggled with the cabooses. And so here's the transfer: Bensenville, Harbor Belt, Bensenville, and then the freight cars that can be in the train. Okay, and then all aboard, let's run some trains. Here's an example of the trains. You click open, you click build, the yellow on the Hampshire, and when you do, you'll get this other one that's open, and you can click move, and I'll show this in just a second. And you'll get a switch list like this. And scheduled work at Bensenville Yard. So you're picking up a locomotive and then you're picking up the 5 cars. And then, as we showed, your scheduled work at King Midas, you're picking up a Milwaukee Road boxcar, and then you're setting out a different Milwaukee Road flat car, and then you're leaving King Midas with 5 cars. Then you're going to Scott Commodities. You're picking up a reading boxcar. You're setting out 2 boxcar and a gondola. You leave Scott Commodities. Now you're 4 cars, 329 tons. Then you're going to the team dock. You're picking up the INN boxcar. You're setting out a Milwaukee boxcar. Then you're going to Flying A Oil. You're picking up 3, not setting any. And then you're going to Lincoln LCL Transfer, picking up 1, setting out 3, and then back to Bensonville. If you notice, it's also telling you exactly where in Bensonville Yard that you're putting the cars, and it needs to know where the cars go and which track the cars ended up in the yard even. And you could print this out, and you have another option I'll cover in just a minute.
So is that a list from the top to the bottom of the moves they're gonna make?
Yes.
Sorted by the location.
Yep. And one of the options you also have is electronic switch list. I'm gonna go ahead and, so if you are using the Wi-Fi in Engine Driver, using JMRI, this is the Android version. You can go to web, what I call the hamburger, the 3 lines, and then go to operations. And I'm gonna go, if I'm going too fast, I apologize. This black line is. So you've got web, the 3 hamburgers, what I call the hamburger, and then operations. This is something that would be in Engine Driver on your phone, very visible. I just took screenshots from my phone. How am I doing time-wise? Okay. Then in operations, you have trains, shawl trains. For the Hampshire Patrol, you have 2 options. You have the manifest or the conductor. Manifest is going to show you, just like that list you just saw, everything that you're doing, but you can't do the switching. And then conductor is where you actually move the cars. And so this is for you to, the manifest is a good idea to see overall what you're going to do the entire job. But you can't work this list. It's just useful to plan your moves. This is where you work. So this is the conductor view of the Hampshire Patrol. And this is where, and this would be on your phone. My goal was to actually have a phone here and show it. Unfortunately, that didn't work out for this today. But here you could actually pick up the Milwaukee Road 2187. And then as you pick it up, you actually on your phone click it and do the blue checkbox. And when you do that, the computer will actually see right that second that you've picked that car up and that car is now in transit. And then as you finish everything out, you're going to click like here on Air's Chairs, I picked up the INN boxcar. I set out the Milwaukee Road boxcar. Then I'm going to click the blue move to our hardwood furniture. And then when you do that, the blue will gray out, and then you're going to move on to the next hardwood furniture. I'm going to pick up the Milwaukee Road boxcar. I'm going to pick up the CB&Q boxcar, and I'm going to set out the reading boxcar. And then again, I'm going to click the move to Remco. And so these are just 3 different screens on your phone as you're going through from location to location. And every time you click a box and click move, JMRI is automatically updating that car has moved. It is now at its new destination. Yeah, Jim. Oh.
Yeah, I had a question, planning this electronic marvel here, plan every move you make, what happens if you can see a better way to do it?
So the
Making-
question was,
Making the moves in a better way, more efficient than following the tracks that the computer led you down.
the question was, do you want to let the AI figure out what you're doing, or do you want to do it on your own?
You can do it on your own as long as you're only responsible to click the box when the car is delivered. How you get it there, it doesn't care. Yep. So if you think, hey, I can get there going to that industry before this industry, that's fine. I would also say go back to the designer and say, hey, I think it's better to go to this industry before that industry, and make that recommendation as well.
So there's a question online that says, are there instructions for all this as you go through each of these pages and options? I'm assuming when you're,
No,
no.
not that I found. Yeah.
There is a help menu, but I'm trying to make
Yeah.
sense of it. It's the other.
Is there an online forum that you can ask questions?
There is on Facebook. There's JMRI operations Facebook group.
Is there a group bio?
There's groups IO as well.
Group
Yes.
Groups IO.
So you could maybe pick someone's brain.
Lots of help available.
There is, but not very great written instructions.
No.
This is a lot of
Trial
this.
and error.
Yeah.
I mean, because it's freeware, right? That's
Yeah.
basically why.
And this PowerPoint is probably. I'm not gonna say that. Okay. And then when your train is done, terminate. And when it's done, terminated, that JMRI is going to know that that train is done, anything's finished, and the cars are delivered. You asked about, or someone asked about scale. In settings, this is customization. This is where you can set your scale. This is where O, HO, Z, T, ON30, OG, whatever scale, all the way down to Z. You can set unit of length, feet or meters. You can add operations menu to the main menu. These are some of the settings that you can do to make things easier. And it's just that simple. It's just clicking that scale. And now it's going to know that 40-foot N scale or 40-foot O scale.
It looks like it's just a big database.
Yeah.
And it seems like, looks really similar to Access part of it, but.
Some of the other things is in build options. One thing you'll see is aggressive. What aggressive, and you have to really drill in to find this, is aggressive makes the space immediately available for another car. So you might build the train on aggressive, that car hasn't left yet, but JMRI is going to assign another car to that spot with a different train. So you might find that that 40 feet of track has another car bound to it, but it hasn't left yet. So just be aware that's what aggressive means, is that it's going to assume that that space is available immediately, even if the car hasn't left the space yet. So you got to be a little cautious about that. Or you're going to find, hey, I'm delivering a car, but there's already a squatter in the space. Now what do I do? The other thing is enabling car routing is with these clicked on, it will take multiple avenues to get that car to that industry, and it may take a convoluted route to get there, especially if you have multiple yards, multiple trains. It may take 2 yards, the local, the patrol, and the interurban and around St. Martha's Vineyard to get that car to where it's going. So just realize that car routing, it's going to route that car however it wants to get that car to that industry somehow. But you may be like, that car went that way and then went that way and then went that way to go there. So
It's like real life stuff.
yes. I find it useful to enable car logging. I find sometimes that cars don't move. I showed you that car that moved 40 times. I know that it's working. I also find that cars have 0 moves. Then I want to go see what's wrong. What has happened? Why isn't that boxcar getting dispatched in the system? Maybe it's not, an industry is not picking it up, or it's not correctly assigned.
But if it's random, that could happen.
It could, but one other thing that we've learned very painfully is if you have a yardmaster who places the cars in the final destination, it is critically important that your road crews do not terminate the trains. If they do, then your yardmaster has a train full of cars and no clue where the cars go in the yard, and has to go to the computer and figure out which track all those cars belong. It is a headache. And it is critical you tell your engine crews, don't terminate your trains when you hit the yard master terminates your train. Can't tell you how many times we've had to do that now. Yeah, Jim and I are both shaking our heads yes. One thing about JMRI, it needs to know where the cars are. Your freight cars do not become free runners. If, like our club, it's your cars can't be free. You can't have guests come and just grab the run of cars and then move them wherever they want, because JMRI needs to know where they are. And then what's in the future? I'm just a hint for the future, and maybe a future. What did you just finish?
Operations clinic.
No, the Saturday,
Oh, sound rail.
Maybe a future sound rail. If you notice, there's a hole in the wall. So something just might have happened. So that modular layout may have just gotten more real estate. So thank you for the time. I did want to escape out of this and go to JMRI, and the viewers can't see this, but there's a black line running through my screen that I can't get rid of. And so there was a question on cars, and I'm going to go add car, and you can go edit. And so you could go 10 foot. You could go 20 foot. Oh, I did 29, but 20 feet. And now those lengths are now available. And so you could do, like, there's 70 foot, but you could do 86 foot, or what are those, 82 foot auto box cars. So just typing it in, you have total ability to do any length that you want. What are the questions?
The kernel question.
Oh, yes. Okay. Kernel.
Blank.
You know what? It's I think it's open for whatever you want it to do. So I don't use it. So yeah, it's if you wanted to assign something to it. Yeah, and I don't use it.
So if you were going to have, say, a group of cars in a unit train, like a unit coal train, they're always together, could you assign all those to a kernel?
Yes.
And then that would always show up as being that group of cars.
Yep.
So the speculation is you use the field kernel to assign a unit of cars to.
You could, or maybe other things as well. I don't know, but that's one use of it.
So yeah, there's unit coal, and then as long as it's assigned to it. Yep.
Yeah.
Unit coal 1, unit coal 2.
If there's anybody online that has a question, if you could either type it in the chat window or go ahead and unmute yourself, and you can ask the question at this time. Anyone still online?
It was pretty dry. I'm sorry. I tried throwing some humor in.
No, you did.
Yes,
Go ahead.
yes. I
Right.
don't want to say anything. You just asked me. It was online. Yes.
Okay, you're still there. Great. But you don't have a question, huh?
No, I don't have a question, but I've written them. So I'm fully convinced. I don't think I want to do this.
So I'll throw a question out. Has anyone used this and have experience with it? I know Jim has played around with it a little bit. How about online? Is anyone online? Silence.
Yeah, Brian.
Go ahead, Byron.
Yeah, our ON30 module group uses this at every show we attend and works really well.
How many cars do you have on your layout?
Well, it varies 40, 50, something
Okay.
like that. We run, but our trains are small. The total database, though, could be close to 100 cars, but we only run about 50 at a time.
Okay, great. Jim?
So I have a friend in Australia that uses it with great success. He's even found a way to add photos to it. And he operates with about 1,000 cars, about like I do. And it works great for him.
So the comment was that there's an acquaintance in Australia that Jim knows that uses it for about 1,000 car layout, and it works great for him. Did you want to show some more on this, or?
I was trying to see if I could quickly see how to add the photo, but it's not something I've explored yet. So
No, it was a companion program. It somehow interfaced with JMRI, and it has to do with printing of the switch lists.
Okay, I know how to add the photos to the switch list. Yes, and
yeah, but not to the roster.
Okay, yep.
So evidently, there's a companion program add-on that you can get to enable adding the photos to the database. Who is ringing? So if you're done, you could stop sharing, and we can open up the screens here.
Yep, done.
All right. So is there anyone else that has a comment or a question on this? Is it everybody's going to download JMRI and start putting their rosters in tonight after the meeting?
Just not the caboose.
What do you guys think?
I think it's a great system. I think it's a case of how big a layout you got. If you got 1,000 cars, it's going to take in 40 different industries and a large layout, it's going to take you a long time to input it.
And Byron, on your modular, how many approximately how many spurs or setouts do you guys have?
Let me think a second. Probably 25.
Okay. So that's pretty complex then.
Yes, it is. But it's been a database. The thing of us with our modules, we set up a different setup every time. So each module is in the database, and now they've just got to go pick the route. Like he pointed out, you can pick the route, and it's a whole new layout every session.
Fun. Anyone else used it or have experience operating with it?
I have. Go ahead. I researched it quite a bit. The thing I was most interested in was setting up signaling on a train layout and setting up the logic for the signaling. And yeah, I thought long and hard about that. I even went as far as to buy a Raspberry Pi, intending to load JMRI on it. I ended up thinking that that's too high tech for the era that I am modeling. I kind of wanted a dispatcher type experience as well as operating experience at the 1960s. And so I am for now foregoing JMRI, but I'm fascinated by what you can do with it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, this is Paul Rising. I have a question. I'm in the process of building my layout, which is about 90% of the track is down, and I have a staging level, which would be an off-scene area where trains are coming from or going to, and then I have an operations level that has 7 industries. It's not very big, but the the track work is fairly condensed, let's put it that way. Does this program allow you to deal with these off-scene issues of other destinations easily, as well as your main operation area?
Yes, it does.
So is that similar to what you were talking about with the Savannah yard, where you could send it to off,
Yes.
kind of off layout, if you will, or staging, if you will?
And that's what I've done is, yeah, I've got my Savannah yard, which is off layout. And that's what I've done is my Savannah yard is off layout, basically a staging, and then they will come back eventually.
Okay, thank you.
So I have an observation. So I attempted to use JMRI ops, my railroad. But I discovered that if you have a very, very complex railroad with lots of interchanges and branch lines, it kind of blew my mind that I had to give it up. But if you had a point A to point B layout or a linear layout that wasn't terribly complicated, it'd be super easy. I had several trains, about 10, I think, that I could run reliably with JMRI. But as soon as it started involving more complex things like interchanges and this branch of that railroad and all this different stuff, it got way over my head. And like you say, there's not a lot of really good instructions about what to do. So I had a perfectly good car system that I went back to. But I can see the advantages, especially on a smaller, less complicated layout. It'd be just great. I operate on a railroad and down in the Portland area once in a while. This is JMRI and it works. This is awesome. You know, you complete a train, he terminates it, clicks build, hands you another sheet, and off you go on a different train. It is way easier than what I do.
And one of the things that I'm going for is, especially going to the phones, is I'm trying to reduce the ink in the paper and the expense, and being able to see the switch list on your phone, and being done and being able to reset or get the new one and not have trash, not have ink, not have paper. And those things are starting to become expensive.
Yeah.
So one of the comments in the room, which if for those of you online may or may not have heard, is that for a complicated railroad with lots of interchanges, it could be pretty overwhelming versus a linear route that maybe only has one interchange or you know, and you're working from one end to the other or whatever. It could be pretty easy to set up and straightforward. But I think every time you add an interchange or hand off to another railroad or whatever, that just ups the ante for any operation. I struggle with that with my little one interchange, trying to communicate that to the operators what to do, what to set out and pick up. I've struggled with that for years. And so I think, yeah, that's probably a fair observation on this.
And to be fair, I think the whole JMRI ops program has changed in the last 10 years.
It has. Yeah.
Because a lot of the screens you showed weren't at all like the screens that I saw.
And I think that is one of the things that if folks are not familiar with JMRI, they're continually updating it. There's a whole team of people that work to support this and maintain it that are really, really smart, that are continually updating. I know I use the Decoder Pro part of it, and it's always improving. It's always coming up with new features that are excellent. So I'm sure the operations portion is.
It keeps, one of the things doing this presentation, one of the things I learned is now the train line colors change. So the dispatcher, the crew color can actually see what trains are in what status.
Wow.
And when the train terminates, it can go gray. When train is in route, and you can actually quickly see what trains are what status. And that is a change that they literally just activated less than a month ago. And I was just reading about that, and I didn't demo it, but I activated it on my version, and it definitely is a nice tweak, a nice update.
I was wondering if BNSF is using this. Yes, in the back.
So you generate the map in JMRI?
You can generate it.
Like the ones we saw you had?
You can actually, yes, and attach
You
it.
generated those in JMRI?
Those are from Doug, but yes.
Okay.
So the
Yeah.
question is, the track plan, is that what you're talking about, or?
Yes, you can actually attach those to the waybills now in JMRI as well.
So you can print a schematic of the track layout?
Yep.
With the spot numbers or whatever on it?
Yep.
So that's in a companion program in the JMRI suite called Panel Pro. You can create a whole dispatcher panel on your computer screen, and it can be interactive, and it can use transponding, and it can show you when the train moves and where it goes. All that stuff is possible in JMRI.
So yeah, the whole Panel Pro is a whole nother module within JMRI and I know I built a CTC panel for my layout with that years ago, and it was very difficult, but it worked very well. I found some guy that did a presentation at a convention in PowerPoint, and that's what I used for the documentation for it, because there was no manual. So
Yep, there's.
How many modules are there?
there's quite a few.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's quite a comprehensive set of programs. You know, if you're using Decoder Pro, that's just a small portion of it.
Yeah, that's the easiest part.
Yeah, there's operations, and there's the signaling, and there's the Panel Pro, and I don't know what else.
The detection.
The what?
The
The
detection.
detection. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else in the room or online? Going on?
Just for grids, I have found a couple of really good pictures of this boxcar at DuPont. If you
Hit
can I
us.
share my screen.
Yes, hit it. Let me give you the ability to do that, Russ. Okay, go for it.
Okay, you see, this is two different views of the same car.
Okay.
And this rascal's about 22 feet long over the ends here. It's about 6 feet wide and about 8 or 9 feet tall. An incredibly simple little car with 4 longitudinal beams are the basic structure of the underbody. And this just sits on top of a flat car, basically, with internal bracing and so on. But the chips models that he's 3D printed are quite adequate to show this car. Anyway, you'll hear a lot more about it if you go to the DuPont get-together.
Very good. Thank you, Russ.
Do we know what cost those kits are?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you know what those kits are going to cost?
No, I don't. I don't. The trick for these cars, at least in my scale, S scale, is that they're none available. And so I'm checking with the Leadville Designs to see what they would cost to have them custom made. You're looking at about $35, $40 a pair for these little guys. They're 10-ton trucks. It's quite small.
I see someone has their hand raised, Bob and Jan. You can unmute yourself and ask your question.
The wrong buttons up there. All right. Someone near the start talked about easy disconnects between modules. I'm going to have a lift out, lift back in at the doorway. Would the easy disconnect be the product to use?
All I used was trailer hitches.
Trailer hitches.
Yeah, the flat 4 trailer hitches. and I just wired them either side from Home Depot, Lowe's, and you just pull them apart, and then you can't. There's no chance of wiring connecting them incorrectly in the future.
Okay, that's not something I've heard in model railroader options.
And they're rugged. They take a lot of abuse, so.
There's an
Thank you.
excellent presentation on modules just recorded. It's up on our 4D site that was done on Off the Beaten Track last month, or this month early. And they used the same electrical connections between the modules.
Trailer
Great
hitches.
clinic, by the way.
All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order?
Yeah, I heard you say you can limit the size of a car going onto a spur. How do you actually create the limiting action?
That's gonna take me a minute.
Did you want to share or what?
That's good, because I shut JMRI down. That's gonna take a minute.
Please hold.
Yeah.
In locations and then car type.
He's going to bring his
probably-
screen back up and show.
Yeah. So give me a sec.
Should have shut it down.
I know. That's what I get. I'll try to explain it because JMRI seems to want to take a minute. What I would do is I would create what is it? I don't know what it's doing. What I would do is I would create a car type. Let's say you have a 20-foot boxcar. So I'd create a car type 20-foot boxcar. And then that spur would only accept that car type. So boxcar or 20-foot boxcar. So that siding would only accept that type of freight car. And so you could limit that siding to only accept that type. I may need to show that. So, yep. I'm going to share the screen.
All right, go for it.
Okay.
So you couldn't have a spur with different length cars?
You could. Okay. Can you see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to go. So I'm going to go to, I'm just going to pick this Chicago. I can't pick that because it's in a train someplace. Okay. I'm going to pick this. Okay. So I've got this boxcar. I'm going to create a new type. I'm going to call it 20-foot boxcar. And I'm going to add it. And then I'm going to add it to the service. And then I'm going to put it that it can go in these trains. And then let's say I want it only going to I want it to only go to Lincoln Stub 1. And so Lincoln Stub 1 will take other types of cars, but 20-foot boxcar will only be able to go to Lincoln Stub 1. Other cars can still go there, but this type of car will only go to that stub. Is that what you were asking?
Well, what's going to keep the car from a 20-foot car from going to another spur? Is there something physically that stops that car?
I think you've assigned it to only go there, correct?
Correct. It will only go there. So now what you can also do is that car, you can also put that you can also go load.
To me, it looks like a lot of these is any is the default, and then if you want to keep sideboards on it, that you want, right? That basically works.
And you can go to you can set this car that it can limit where it can only go oh, I know where it is, sorry. It's here in set. So you can also set optional. Right now they're blank, but you can also go in here that this car can always, when its final destination will always be LCL transfer stub 1. So its final destination will always be that. Now, usually it's always auto, but I'm overriding that. You can also say that you can also go in and set its destination. You can also set its train that it always be in the Galwood Patrol. You can also set return when empty. So every time it's empty, it's going to go to Bensonville Yard, track 1. So every time it's empty, it's going there. No matter what, it's going to go to that track. Or every time it's empty, it's going to end up in the clearing yard and it's going to leave. It's going to go interchange. No matter what, when it's empty, it's gone. It's history. And when it's loaded, it's going to go to LLCL transfer stub 1. So empty, loaded, and that is the only places it can go. And that this car is going to be trapped in that service no matter what. And this is in the settings of this car.
So if it tries to go to another stub, it's going to get its hand slapped or a ruler or alarms go off?
The computer,
what do you mean it can only go there?
Computer won't let it go anywhere but that. Yeah, it won't get sent anywhere but those locations. Yep. Yeah.
All right. Okay, is there any final questions? Everybody's ready to go get JMRI and get it going, right? Or run from it. Okay, well, I think we'll go ahead and conclude the meeting portion of our clinic this month. And we are going to meet in May, I believe it's May 17th, Friday night. And I think I'm on the docket for that night. But Greg will send out some information, and I'm going to try to get the grab iron updated on the 4th Division site as well for it. So